The mist hung heavy over the towering pines of the Teutoburg Forest, cloaking the paths in silence. 3 Roman legions, nearly 20,000 men strong, marched deeper into the shadows, their shields glinting faintly beneath the gray skies. They believed themselves invincible, the unstoppable force of the world's greatest empire, but hidden beyond the dense thickets. Thousands of Germanic warriors lay in wait, their faces painted, their weapons sharpened, their rage simmering. What began as a confident march into unknown territory would soon become one of the darkest chapters in Roman history. A massacre that would haunt an emperor and alter the fate of Europe forever. Chapter 1. Rome's Northern Dream. By the dawn of the 1st century, the Roman Empire stretched across vast lands, from the scorching deserts of Egypt to the icy highlands of Britannia. But to the north, beyond the Rhine, lay the wild, untamed lands of Germania. Dense forests, unpredictable rivers, and scattered tribes, fiercely protective of their independence. For Emperor Augustus, Germania represented more than territory. It was the promise of total dominance in Europe. If Rome could subdue these lands, it would secure its borders and access to limitless resources. To make this vision a reality, Augustus dispatched legions into Germania under the leadership of trusted commanders. Roman roads were carved into the wilderness, forts were erected, and treaties were signed with local chieftains to ensure cooperation. Among these Germanic allies was a young noble named Arminius, who had been taken to Rome as a child, educated, trained as a soldier, and even granted citizenship. The Romans believed they had molded him into one of their own, but Germania's forests still whispered to his soul. The Germanic tribes, however, were far from passive. While they seemed scattered and divided, their hatred for Roman rule simmered beneath the surface. Heavy taxes, forced conscriptions, and disrespect toward their customs fueled resentment. Rome saw Germania as an untamed frontier. The tribes saw Rome as a foreign invader threatening their way of life. In this growing tension, seeds of rebellion began to take root. Seeds Arminius would one day water with Roman blood. Chapter 2. The Rise of Arminius. Arminius was no ordinary warrior. Born into the noble Kalkriese tribe, he had spent much of his youth as a hostage in Rome, a common practice to secure loyalty. There, he absorbed Roman military tactics, mastered Latin, and gained an insider's view of the empire's strengths and weaknesses. By the time he returned to Germania, he wore the armor of a Roman officer, but carried the heart of a Germanic son. Rome saw him as loyal, his people saw him as hope. Upon his return, Arminius quickly rose to prominence, earning the trust of Publius Quinctilius Varus, the Roman governor of Germania. Varus, overconfident and complacent, relied heavily on Arminius to manage tribal relations and suppress dissent. To the Romans, Arminius was a shining example of assimilation, proof that the barbarians could be civilized. To Arminius, it was the perfect cover for a betrayal years in the making. Quietly, Arminius began forging alliances among the Germanic tribes. He spoke of freedom, of casting off the chains of Roman rule, of reclaiming the sacred forests and ancestral lands. His charisma and Roman training gave him an aura of authority the tribes respected. Slowly, the chieftains agreed to unite under his leadership, laying the groundwork for one of history's greatest ambushes. Chapter 3. The Man Called Varus. Publius Quinctilius Varus was a seasoned Roman administrator, but an unremarkable military leader. Augustus entrusted him with Germania, expecting him to bring Roman order to the wild frontier. But Varus misunderstood his assignment. Instead of respecting tribal customs, he imposed harsh Roman laws and heavy taxation, angering the very people he was meant to govern. Varus' arrogance blinded him to the growing storm. He dismissed reports of tribal unrest, confident in Roman superiority. To him, the Germanic tribes were primitive savages, no match for Rome's disciplined legions and advanced strategies. But Varus failed to see that their apparent disunity was an illusion carefully maintained by Arminius, who played both sides with unmatched cunning. By 09 AD, Varus commanded 3 legions, the 17, 18, and 19, supported by cavalry, auxiliaries, and supply trains. He believed these forces would be enough to maintain Roman dominance. What he didn't know was that every step they took deeper into Germania brought them closer to annihilation. Chapter 4. Setting the trap, Arminius delivered his final deception with precision. He told Varus of a rebellion among distant tribes and urged him to march deep into the Teutoburg Forest to suppress the uprising. Trusting his loyal officer, Varus ordered the legions to prepare. They marched without suspicion, carrying full gear, supply wagons, and civilians, an army prepared for occupation, not war. The Teutoburg Forest was unlike anything Roman soldiers had ever faced. Its dense canopy blotted out the sun, and narrow paths twisted unpredictably between towering pines and treacherous bogs. Roman formations, so effective on open ground, became clumsy and vulnerable in this terrain. Rain began to fall, soaking cloaks, turning the roads into mud, and weighing down shields and armor. All the while, Germanic warriors watched silently from the shadows. They were patient, blending into the wilderness. They knew intimately the trap was set. As the Romans pushed deeper into the forest, Arminius slipped away under the guise of gathering reinforcements. Varus didn't suspect a thing. Chapter 5. The ambush begins. The first attack came suddenly. Spears rained down from hidden positions, striking soldiers before they even raised their shields. War cries erupted from the trees as Germanic warriors surged forward, hacking into the disoriented Roman columns. Horses panicked, carts overturned, and screams drowned out orders. Chaos consumed the legions. The Romans tried to form their famous defensive formations, but the forest betrayed them. Narrow paths prevented tight ranks, and visibility was near zero under the thick mist. Every shadow concealed an enemy, every fallen branch became a snare, and every Roman step forward brought another wave of death. Varus' officers urged him to retreat, but it was already too late. The forest became a slaughterhouse. Arminius' knowledge of Roman tactics gave the Germans an overwhelming advantage. They struck, vanished, and struck again, leaving the Romans exhausted, terrified, and hopelessly divided. Chapter 6. Trapped and bleeding, by the second day, the Romans were in disarray. Supply wagons were abandoned, wounded soldiers left behind, and officers killed faster than replacements could take command. Hunger gnawed at the survivors as the rain poured relentlessly, soaking their gear and chilling them to the bone. Every attempt to regroup failed. Arminius had chosen the terrain perfectly. Every route forward led into another ambush. Every retreat funneled into dead ends. Germanic warriors taunted the Romans from the shadows, dragging away the fallen and mutilating the bodies to sow terror. Even the famed Roman discipline began to crumble. Soldiers threw down their weapons and fled blindly into the forest, only to be cut down moments later. What had begun as an imperial expedition had turned into a desperate fight for survival, and the forest showed no mercy. Chapter 7. Varus Desperation. As the third day dawned, exhaustion consumed the Roman legions. Varus stood at the heart of the chaos, his once proud army reduced to scattered pockets of resistance. The sounds of death were everywhere, the clash of steel, the cries of the wounded, the haunting war horns of the Germanic tribes. He still clung to hope, believing if the legions could break free of the forest, they could regroup and strike back. But every path led deeper into the trap. Messages arrived from surviving officers, each one worse than the last. Entire cohorts had vanished. Auxiliary forces had been wiped out. Even the prized cavalry, the pride of Roman speed and maneuverability, had been crushed in the swampy terrain. Varus ordered desperate counterattacks, but Germanic warriors vanished as quickly as they appeared, melting into the mist. Realization struck Varus with a force greater than any spear. He had trusted Arminius, relied on him, and now saw the bitter truth. Betrayal had doomed them, yet he refused to surrender. Instead, he commanded the men to hold their ground and push onward. But the forest belonged to the Germans, and the Germans would show no mercy. Chapter 8. The Fall of the Eagles. For Roman soldiers, the eagle's standards were sacred, symbols of their legion's honor, power, and the might of Rome itself. Losing them was unthinkable. Yet one by one, the eagles fell. Germanic warriors targeted the standard-bearers with relentless precision, cutting through Roman defenses to seize the golden icons. Each captured eagle sent shockwaves of despair through the ranks. As the rain lashed down, Roman soldiers began to falter. The once-proud formations dissolved into fragmented groups, fighting for their lives. Wounded men were abandoned, officers slain, and supply trains lost. The cries of "Protect the Eagles" echoed through the forest, but they were drowned out by the deafening roars of Germanic victory. For Arminius, the fall of the standards was symbolic. It was more than a battle won. It was Roman pride broken, their invincibility shattered. Across the battlefield, warriors raised captured eagles aloft, screaming war chants to the gods of the forest. For the first time in centuries, Rome's dominance had met its match. Chapter 9. Varus Final Act. By the fourth day, the Roman resistance had crumbled. Supplies were gone, weapons dulled, and morale shattered beyond repair. Varus, wounded and exhausted, knew the end was near. Surrounded by officers and bodyguards, he faced a choice: capture or death. For a Roman governor, there was only one acceptable path. Drawing his sword, Varus fell upon his blade, choosing honor over humiliation. His officers followed, committing suicide rather than endure torture or slavery. Their deaths were swift, but their men were not so fortunate. Captured Roman soldiers faced unspeakable fates, sacrificed to Germanic gods, or enslaved deep within the forests they had sought to conquer. For Arminius, Varus' death marked the culmination of years of planning. He had struck the heart of Rome's ambitions and emerged victorious. Yet his victory would not bring lasting unity among the tribes. The same rivalries that had once divided them would soon resurface, threatening everything he had fought to achieve. Chapter 10. Augustus Nightmare. When word of the disaster reached Rome, the empire was thrown into shock. Emperor Augustus, upon hearing of the destruction of 3 entire legions, was said to have torn his robes in grief. Eyewitnesses recorded him wandering the palace halls, crying out, "Quinctilius Varus, give me back my legions." It was a wound Rome would never forget. The psychological blow was immense. For centuries, Rome had expanded relentlessly, its legions feared across continents. Now, for the first time, the empire had been utterly humiliated. Politicians whispered of rebellion. Citizens feared Germania would invade Italy itself. Augustus tightened Rome's borders, reinforcing garrisons and fortifications to protect the empire's heartlands. Yet, Augustus's grief was matched by fury. He vowed vengeance, planning massive campaigns to reclaim the lost eagles and punish the tribes. But Germania was no ordinary frontier. Its endless forests, bogs, and guerrilla tactics made conquest nearly impossible. For the first time in Roman history, ambition had met its limits. Chapter 11. Germanicus strikes back. In the years following the massacre, Rome launched retaliatory campaigns under the brilliant general Germanicus, the adopted son of Emperor Tiberius. Unlike Varus, Germanicus understood the land and the people, using speed, intelligence, and brutal efficiency to hunt down the rebellious tribes. In 15 AD, Germanicus led a daring campaign deep into Germania, recovering 2 of the 3 lost eagles. Roman soldiers rejoiced at reclaiming these sacred symbols, and Germanicus became a celebrated hero. Yet even his victories came at a terrible cost. Every mile of advance required blood, every forest path hid in ambush, and every river crossing became a battlefield. Despite his successes, Germanicus faced the same challenge as Varus. Germania could not be held. Its terrain devoured armies, its tribes refused submission, and its people would rather die than accept Roman rule. After years of bitter fighting, Rome reluctantly abandoned its dream of conquest beyond the Rhine. Chapter 12. Arminius' Triumph and Tragedy. For a time, Arminius stood as the undisputed champion of Germania. Songs were sung in his honor, and his name carried across the forests like a war cry. Yet unity among the tribes was fleeting. Old rivalries resurfaced, and jealousy brewed among rival chieftains who resented his growing power. Rome, though defeated, did not disappear. Diplomats, spies, and assassins sought to destabilize Arminius' influence. Slowly, alliances fractured, and one's loyal tribes turned against him. In 21 AD, Arminius was betrayed by his own kin and killed, not by Roman steel, but by Germanic treachery. Arminius' death symbolized a harsh truth. Germania was free, but never united. While he had defeated the greatest empire on earth, he could not overcome the divisions within his own people. His legacy, however, endured, remembered as the man who halted Rome's northern ambitions forever. Chapter 13. The fate of the lost legions. For centuries, legends swirled around the 17, 18, and 19 legions. Some whispered that survivors had fled east and founded hidden communities in distant lands. Others claimed entire units were captured and forced into slavery deep within Germania's forests. Archaeological discoveries at Kalkriese, believed to be the battle site, have uncovered haunting evidence. Scattered coins, shattered helmets, twisted weapons, and mass graves. Among the findings were the remains of mutilated Roman soldiers, confirmation of the brutal vengeance exacted by the Germanic tribes. Even today, the ultimate fate of the legions remains partly shrouded in mystery. What is certain, however, is that their destruction marked a turning point in Roman history. The empire would never again attempt full conquest of Germania. The forest had swallowed the legions, and with them, Rome's dreams. Chapter 14. A world divided. The consequences of the battle rippled far beyond the forest by halting Roman expansion. The Teutoburg disaster preserved the cultural divide between the Latin West and the Germanic North. Had Rome succeeded, Europe's language, religion, and history might have unfolded in entirely different ways. The Rhine River became the de facto boundary between Roman civilization and the tribal lands beyond. Fortresses rose along its banks, and Rome poured resources into defending this new frontier. Germania, untamed and unconquered, remained a constant source of fear and fascination for centuries. This boundary shaped Europe's destiny. While Rome's influence spread across Gaul, Hispania, and Britannia, the lands beyond the Rhine developed independently. The echoes of Teutoburg Forest still resonate in Europe's cultural map, dividing nations, languages, and identities even today. Chapter 15: Echoes Through Time. More than 2,000 years later, the Battle of Teutoburg Forest remains etched into history as one of Rome's greatest defeats. Monuments like the towering Hermannsdenkmal honor Arminius as a national hero in Germany, while Roman historians still speak of the battle with reverence and sorrow. For archaeologists and historians, Teutoburg is a window into the past. Each artifact unearthed tells a story of ambition, betrayal, and resilience. The coins, swords, and skeletal remains are silent witnesses to a clash that changed the course of empires and redrew the map of Europe. The forest itself still stands, quiet and unyielding. Among the pines and shadows, the whispers of battle seem to linger. The Roman legions are gone, their eagles lost, but their memory endures. Teutoburg Forest is more than a battlefield. It is a reminder of hubris, courage, and the unyielding will of a people determined to remain free. The Battle of Teutoburg Forest was not just the story of a defeat. It was the tale of an empire's limits, a people's defiance, and a moment where history itself shifted course. Rome would recover, Germania would remain unconquered, and Europe would forever bear the marks of this clash in the shadows. If you enjoyed this deep dive into ancient history, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to explore more forgotten battles and untold stories that shaped our world. The past still speaks. You just have to know where to listen.